You know when you have a dream and you see a pretty woman? You've had that? Now you never actually see an ugly woman in dreams. It's always a pretty woman. And by the way, it's always the same woman for all of us. All of us have a dream of the same exact woman. Now she looks different than the woman in his dreams and his dreams and everybody else's dreams. But it's always the same character. And she's more dangerous than the Satan himself. To such an extent that you're not even allowed to say her name. Who is she? The Satan's wife. You're not even allowed to say her name. What are you going to call her for? Good luck. Every time someone wastes seed, they're literally creating themselves the worst type of Gehenom there is. One of these types of Gehenoms that doesn't end. Ever. People don't believe in eternal punishment. They think, nah, Kvod Harav, you're machmir, too much. Where does it say in the Torah it's eternal punishment? Where does it say it? As we all know, we got Torah b'chtav and Torah be'al peh. Oral Torah and written Torah. You go to Gemara, Masechet Rosh Hashanah, page 17a. Wrongdoers of Israel who sin with their body. Sounds familiar, right? And wrongdoers of the Gentiles who sin with their body. Also sounds familiar. Go down to Gehenom and are punished there for 12 months. This first 12 months is the trial. After 12 months, their body is consumed and their soul is burned, and the wind scatters them under the soles of the feet of the righteous. And you shall tread down the wicked, and they shall be as ashes under the souls of the righteous. But as for the minim, and for the informers, and for the scoffers, who rejected the Torah and denied the resurrection of the dead, and those who abandoned the ways of the community, and who sinned and made the masses sin, these will go down to Gehenom and be punished there for all generations. As it says, and they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that have rebelled against me. Meaning Gehenom will be consumed by, they will not be consumed. Meaning Gehenom eventually will end when the Mashiach comes. Eventually there's no more Gehenom, except their part of the Gehenom. That continues forever, 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 forever. Any person who has gotten to the point where he doesn't waste seed anymore, not only he doesn't waste seed on purpose, I'm talking about, that's of course. I'm talking about he got to a point where he doesn't waste seed at night, meaning even accidental. That's a real tzaddik. That's where Yosef HaTzaddik got his name. Somebody like that, if he comes over your house, you can tell everybody, tzaddik balayil. That's a person, you should ask for him for a blessing. Why? Because that's a person that overcame what the Rambam says is the most difficult obstacle in human nature to overcome. Once you become addicted to wasting seed, it's almost impossible to overcome. But what the Rambam is trying to teach us is that if you fail, pick up, try again and again and again and again and again until it's finished. But when it comes to seed, this is both a physical and a spiritual disease. But human nature is something that you could overcome. Once you admit that you're wrong. If you don't admit that you're wrong, then we've already failed before we started.
So when it says that wasting seed is the biggest sin in the Torah, it's not in essence saying it's bigger than Chilul Shabbat, or it's bigger than, lending another Jew money and charging him interest. It's in essence saying it's part of the same group, that if you violate it, it's as if you violated the entire Torah. So these are sins you simply have to do everything possible to avoid, especially avoid them on purpose. So many, just to say it clearly so you wake up, it's better you die than make these sins, according to the Torah. But wasting seed and in general immodesty is one of those sins where even if you know it's wrong, it's very hard to do tshuva. The Rambam, as I told you, says this is the hardest thing to overcome. Now there's a few things that a person needs to know about wasting seed. First and foremost, it's hated by Hashem. The Gemara in Masechet Nida, page 16b, says that each time a seed leaves the body of the man, there's a malach that goes to Hashem and asks Hashem, what should I do with this? This malach's name is Laila. This malach takes the seed to Hashem Yitbራሕ, to the Kisei HaKavod, and he talks about all of the potential of this seed. This seed could be the biggest rabbi in the world. This seed could be the Mashiach. This seed could be a Mezakeh Rabin. This seed could be Sarah Imenu. This seed could be Chana. This seed could be Rachel. This seed could be Korach. This seed has a lot of potential. What should I do with this one? But that's assuming the seed is going in the right place. When a person misuses his seed, immediately it's known in Shamayim that this seed is going to get killed. This seed is being destroyed. And the Rambam says anytime a man wastes seed, it's 100% murder. The Gemara elaborates and says that anytime that a person wastes seed, it's as if he brought the flood. Why the flood? Why not something else? Because the Gemara already knew things that we only discovered in recent generations. The flood, what did the flood do? The flood destroyed the entire world. The flood destroyed millions or billions of people. When a man wastes seed, he's also destroying hundreds of millions of souls that had a potential of being the biggest rabbi in the world, the biggest tzadikah in the world. He's destroying hundreds of millions of them. So the Gemara already, with the Ruach HaKodesh, the Chachamim had already knew. Without the microscopes and the telescopes and the microphones and the iPods and the iPhones and the scientists that pretend like they know what they're talking about. But I already knew. Hashem says, you waste seed, you're bringing the flood. Flood killed millions, you're killing millions. In Shamayim, that's the deen they gave the person. Oh yeah, this person, this Steve. Yeah, Steve just murdered 300 million people today. Wake up, Steve. That was only 9 in the morning. By the time it was 5 o'clock, Steve is bored again. So he decides to kill another 300 million. And the reality is, Rabotai, a person could live his whole life as a murderer and not even know it because he doesn't realize that the essence of a person is his seed. Meaning the seed is even more significant than the blood itself. Some people like to make excuses. They say things like, no, this is crazy, every guy's addicted to it. Nowhere in any halachic book in the history of Am Yisrael did anyone ever say it's permitted to waste seed. Nowhere. No one ever said it's allowed. In fact, they said it's the worst sin in the entire Torah. The exact opposite. Even before Am Yisrael received the Torah, even before Am Yisrael was even born, it was not allowed. The entire generation of Noach got killed because they wasted seed. Neither one of them were Jewish. Neither one of them had a Torah like we do. Still, Hashem killed them on the spot because they wasted seed. Meaning that this is not only that it's forbidden for Jews, it's forbidden for non-Jews. It's specifically considered disgusting to Hashem. The Gemara in Masechet Ta'anit, page 10a, says Gan Eden is 60 times the size of Earth. Whatever that is, time it by 60, that's Gan Eden. There's two Gan Edens. There's one here, physical, and there's one spiritual, above and beyond. That one is 60 times the size of Earth. Gehenom is 60 times the size of Gan Eden. But some say, no, it's not 60 times the size of Gan Eden. There's no size to Gehenom. Why? It continues to grow. Now anyone with a little bit of sechel asks themselves, why is Gehenom continuing to grow? Isn't that enough? No, there's more entrants every week. Every week more people join Gehenom and not as many join Gan Eden. Why? Because apparently they haven't done tshuva. The Gemara Masechet Sotah says something very interesting. When there's an increased amount of women that are immodest, and as the Torah describes them, as women with stretched necks and winking eyes. You know, the kind of women that want to get attention. It says a person like that stretched neck and winking eyes, women that like attention, people that do something, she wants to make sure you know that she's the one laughing. She talks loud enough for the neighbors to hear. This is an act of immodesty. And the Gemara says that when there's an increased number of women that are described as walking with stretched necks and winking eyes, the use of bitter waters of the sotah should have been increased as well. That immodesty eventually leads to people cheating on each other. A woman who causes men to sin because she decided to put a picture on the internet because she saw a movie star do it. She wants to feel like she's in Hollywood. She's hoping that Hollywood catches her image on Facebook. And maybe they call it, wait, we saw your picture? You're hired. You're hired because we saw your picture go like that. So you're hired. We're going to put you on Blockbuster movie, $50 million because you puckered your lips. Every woman, she takes pictures, put it on the internet. She wants to make sure everybody knows she can pucker her lips. She looks cute. She puts the most immodest outfit on the world. Everything. A woman doesn't realize what kind of damage she's bringing herself by doing such a thing. Women don't understand how sick the mind of men is. They honestly don't understand. They don't understand how sick men are unless you have Torah. Women don't see it that way. Why? Because they think we think like them. I've said this 1,000 times and still people are surprised. Rabbi Aaron Rata says a woman who causes men to sin because of her immodesty, immodest behavior, immodest dress, immodest laugh, immodest picture, anything, will not be released from Gehenom until all that she created, meaning all the demons that she created from his wasting seed, are destroyed from the world. They talk to you about how they're going to put you in Gehenom if you don't do tshuva for wasting seed, and they're going to start with the hole that you wasted, and then they're going to rip it apart into 50 million pieces and make sure that you remember this was not what you were supposed to do. And then the woman that liked to expose herself because she wanted to make sure that everybody knows she's around, they're going to hang her by her sex organs on the wall as display, like my client used to hang animals. These are the types of things that Tzaddikim, Kodesh Kodeshim, wrote. I'm going to give you some other things, how to fix this problem. Rabbi Eliyahu Mani, who writes a lot of things that are mamash a tragedy to even read. Some of the things that he writes about what happens to people who don't do tshuva. What the number one cause of death of the tzaddikim is people that waste seed. People that waste seed create demons that look like dogs and pigs. And these dogs and pigs come to hurt them. אסור לישון בבית יחידי, וכל הישן בבית יחידי, אחזתו לילית. It's forbidden to sleep alone in a house. Whoever sleeps alone in the house will be seized by Lilith. Who's Lilith? The wife of the Satan himself that's responsible, helping every man make the crime of wasting seed even when he doesn't want to. A person that wastes seed, even if he's born with a fortune of good mazal, all will be turned until he becomes poor and loses on all the things that he does, to the extent that even the place he lives will start rejecting him. Even the land itself becomes disgusted from him and all the sins that he made, that it vomits him. How to fix all of this? First and foremost, the person needs to watch his eyes. This is a given. This is something we all know about. We're going to go into details in a moment. But he has to watch his eyes to the extent that he's not even allowed to see animals doing what they do. He also has to watch his mouth. If you curse, you will waste seed. But if you want to do serious tshuva, this is a must. Don't speak to the woman. The Mishnah says, who is this woman? His own wife. Don't speak to her too much. Meaning, speak just enough to do what you need to do, to maintain the relationship, to pay attention to her, but don't become her second girlfriend. Talk when it's necessary. Talk when it has a meaning. Needless to say, don't talk to strangers. If it's a strange woman, unless she's your manager, your customer, your boss, you have absolutely no reason to talk to her. A guy shouldn't even get to a point of even touching women or their clothing. All of these men that are in the clothing business, if it's women's clothing, they should probably find a different profession. Further, don't waste your time being sad. Sadness leads to wasting seed, sadness leads to promiscuity, sadness leads to a lot of problems. All of these things that make people sad, get over it. You don't, you're letting the Yetzer Hara park in your house. And the Yetzer Hara, he's not looking for you to make small sins. He's looking for you to start with small sins. And then he takes over the entire account. Listening to unholy music, unholy things, any type of secular music, non-kosher music, non-Torah music, is going to lead a person to wasting seed. People that like to listen to rap full of curses, people that like to listen to hip-hop full of curses, people like to listen to these types of songs that talk about arrogance, money, promiscuity, all types of garbage. It's not just bad for your time, it's bad for your neshama. It's bad for your neshama. You listen to it, you're going to think it. You're going to think it, you're going to do it. That's why the Rambam posek, he says, Irurei avera are worse than avera. Thinking about the avera is even worse than the avera itself. Also, when you go to sleep, make sure you don't have clothing or shoes around your bed. Also, spider webs above the bed. But also, another Chacham says that it also leads to shlom bayit problems. Even if you don't have arachnophobia, doesn't make a difference. You have spider webs, clean it. Also, people that don't wash their hands in the morning, that don't do netilat yadayim, they're not careful with netilat yadayim, they should know that when you go to sleep, it's 1/60th of death, and when you wake up in the morning, there's a special malach that's still on there. That malach is the daughter of the Satan. You're not even allowed to touch your ears. You're not allowed to touch your nose. You're not allowed to touch your genitals. You're not allowed to touch your mouth. The Gemara says it's better off you cut off his hand than him touching himself, any part of his body, before he washes his hand with netilat yadayim. Next is sleeping too much. Sleeping too much leads to wasting seed, especially sleeping deep. Also, it's treating mitzvot lightly. He says if you start treating mitzvot lightly, you're going to waste seed. Why? Because your mind is not clean. And at night, it's not going to be strong enough that when the Satan's wife shows up, you're not going to be able to beat her. Or anybody that disrespects the sages. You start saying, nah, Rashi, I don't think Rashi was right on this one. Rambam, nah, I'm not really sure. You treat the sages lightly, no good. Or somebody likes to play with his hair. You ever see these guys play with their hair? You know, they put the gel in their hair and they do their hair 500 times a day. You know, in case Hollywood shows up, no good. It's going to lead to wasting seed. You're too comfortable with your body. But worse than anything else, everything I read to you until now, there's one thing that's worse than everything. Gava. Someone that's arrogant. A person that's arrogant is guaranteed to waste seed. Not only accidental, but also on purpose. Because the root of wasting seed is gava. Such an extent that Rabbi Nachman Mibreslev says, the people that are gaftanim, the people that are arrogant, end up wasting seed. If they don't have that under control, they're going to become very promiscuous. If they don't have that under control, they're going to become homosexuals too. Once a person does not control his arrogance and starts thinking that everything belongs to them, their body belongs to them, somebody else's body belongs to them, and doesn't control himself, has excuses for everything, she has excuses for everything, eventually their natural state is not going to be so natural.
First witness is Dr. Anthony Levatino. Dr. Levatino is a board-certified obstetrician gynecologist. Over the course of his career, Dr. Levatino has practiced obstetrics and gynecology in both private and university settings, including as an associate professor of OBGYN at the Albany Medical College. And Dr. Levatino, we'll begin with you. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. Second trimester D&E abortions performed between roughly 14 and 24 weeks of gestation. Your patient today is 17 years old. She's 22 weeks pregnant. Her baby is the length of your hand plus a couple of inches, and she's been feeling her baby kick for the last several weeks, but she's asleep on an operating room table. You walk into that operating room scrubbed and gowned, and after removing laminaria, you introduce a suction catheter into the uterus. This is a 14 French suction catheter. If she were 12 weeks pregnant or less, basically the width of your hand or smaller, you could basically do the entire procedure with this. But babies this big don't fit through catheters this size. After suctioning the amniotic fluid out from around the baby, you introduce an instrument called a Sofer clamp. It's about 13 inches long. It's made of stainless steel. The business end of this clamp is about 2.5 inches long and a 1/2 inch wide. There are rows of sharp teeth This is a grasping instrument, and when it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. A D&E procedure is a blind abortion, so picture yourself introducing this and grabbing anything you can blindly and pull, and I do mean hard, and out pops a leg about that big, which you put down on the table next to you. Reach in again, pull out an arm about the same length, which you put down on the table next to you. And use this instrument again and again to tear out the spine, the intestines, the heart and lungs.
It didn't have a heartbeat, it didn't have a face, it didn't have feelings, it was a clump of cells and tissue. I can also promise you that had I been forced to see this pregnancy through, I would have done what women have done for all the decades people like you have been trying to stop abortions. I would have gone to any length, medically overseen or not, to end my pregnancy.
Now we are living in such depravity that there are people, like the people that oppose this bill, that are willing to say, I know it's a human being, I know it has a heartbeat, I know there is life there, and I know it is innocent, and I'm willing to kill it.
You know, earlier on I described stacking up body parts on the side of the table. When you do an abortion, you need to keep inventory. You have to make sure you get 2 arms and 2 legs and all the pieces.
After all the parts were accounted for, the POC lab technician would dump everything out into a glass baking dish that sat on top of an X-ray light box, and she would reassemble the parts of the baby. I'm talking about first trimester abortion. Yes, there are parts. Yes, they must be reassembled. The baby is fully formed. Every internal organ is formed by 12 weeks gestation. So yes, there are parts, even earlier than 12 weeks.
Over 1,200 abortions, first and second trimester up to 24 weeks, and all the rest of it, and being very dedicated to it. For the first time in my life, I really looked at that pile of body parts on the side of the table, and I didn't see her wonderful right to choose, and I didn't see all the money I just made. All I could see was somebody's son or daughter.
The epididymis, a tightly coiled 6-meter-long tube which can hold over 1 billion sperm.
Sperm are really quite unique because they're almost like free living cells. They almost have a life of their own. They have but one aim, which is to deliver a genetic payload from the male to the female through a really quite complex series of environments, both in the male and the female reproductive tract.
You've got hundreds of millions of cells that are swimming wildly about. You've got a lot of death. You've got a lot of obstacles to overcome.
Sperm counts are considered low if the count is generally less than 20 million sperm per milliliter of ejaculate. Some experts consider less than 15 million per milliliter as being the lower limit of normal.
Well, they never ask for directions, which is part of the problem. The concentration of sperm in the sample is 87 million. The average man will have 60 to 80 million sperms.
How much sperm per milliliter a man makes. In a man that has a 2 milliliter ejaculate, which is about a half a teaspoon, that's sort of in that normal range, how many millions per ejaculate he makes. And a normal number should be somewhere around 20 million or higher. I've also seen men that come in and have 200 million sperm per milliliter.
We have sunk to a new low in our society. Taking the life of an innocent human being that is your own flesh and blood and your own DNA. It's not normal. And it is time for us to rectify what we have done.
Lust is a sexual desire that dishonors its object and disregards God. The lusted after woman or man in your head or on the screen or on the street is dishonored, not treated as a sacred, precious, eternal person in the image of God.
And it had nothing to do with religious shame. I didn't really grow up religious. I simply realized at that time I couldn't even not do it for a day to allow my injuries to heal. Over 10 hours a day. I tried to quit dozens of times, hundreds of times. I realized that I essentially conditioned my brain to prefer pixels over, people. and partners.
Very few people realize just how addictive pornography really is. Pornography is as addictive as crack cocaine. One exposure to a 13-year-old boy at just the right time, and he will grab that, and it will become very much a part of him and will be there for the rest of his life. It functions very much like drugs. You take a little bit and it goes a long ways, but you bore with that and you take a little more, and you need more, and you need more, and you need more.
Like, I didn't ever think that, watching porn and, doing drugs was gonna have me one day talking to you. But I'm here.
It's me, Terry Crews again. The subject is dirty little secret. For years, my dirty little secret was that I was addicted to pornography.
So that you begin with soft-core pornography. That's Playboy, Penthouse.
Playboy was my gateway into full-on pornography addiction. My dad had a Playboy left out at age 5, and it's affected almost every choice I made for the rest of my life, from age 5 to now having to kick the habit. And it just presents itself in the open, like it's okay. And I stand up and say, it's not okay. People are brainwashed by it. People are addicted to it. It is the modern day cigarette. Some people drown themselves in drugs, and I drown myself in my addiction. Which was what? Sex.
I try to stay off of pornography, man. That's one of my biggest arch nemesis is pornography.
Why?
Because it just weakens me. Yeah.
How so?
My fantasies and stuff, they're not mine anymore.
Then what happens with an addiction to pornography is you go from there to a little fire trail, a little barrier, where you've seen everything that a man and woman can do together. Now what? Because, see, one of the characteristics of pornography is that you bore with it. This stage becomes boring very quickly.
Somebody created them better than my imagination can. And so they live in these, on the internet in these boxes. And it's like not having to be engaged with my actual feelings or anything. So then when I am engaging with somebody that I care about or something, it just doesn't calculate for me emotionally as well. But it's definitely made it tougher for me over the years. I think it should be shut down, man. I think it's harming a lot of men, man. I really do.
But it also impacted my relationships.
People who spend too much time watching pornography, they have trouble performing with regular sex.
It was something that, my wife was literally like, I don't know you anymore. I'm out of here.
It just takes out the intimacy.
There's definitely a danger in immediate access to pornography. Today it's the most immediate access because you get it on your phone.
Oh, you can get it, yeah.
You pull up your laptop, open it up, type in some words. It's so easy. And this has never been the case before. It's unlike any other time period in human history. When you have instant access to things, you can abuse it.
Then you move on to another one, and you're walking down this path. What happens when you get to the point that you've seen it all?
This morning, more Hollywood heavyweights are being accused of sexual harassment. There are new developments in the scandal involving movie mogul Harvey Weinstein.
New allegations against Kevin Spacey,
Louis C.K.,
James Toback,
Jeffrey Tambor,
director Brett Ratner,
actor James Franco, actor Dustin Hoffman.
You recently revealed you were sexually assaulted by a director.
Well,
why did you reveal it?
There is a bit of a witch hunt happening. It's across every industry.
Yes.
Focus seems to be on Hollywood.
Yes.
But it's across every industry.
Even that freaky, weird pedophile that be going on, you hear about it, but it's dark and demonic energy that this industry was built on. And people manipulate young women, they manipulate kids, and at the end of the day, it's all for the dollar and all to feed their ego. So I've seen where you be like, that's just not right.
And they go to the perversions.
The biggest political scandal Britain has ever faced. It involves a secret network of the highest office holders in the land. Cabinet ministers, judges, diplomats, even one of the country's top spies. These men are accused of some of the most sadistic child sexual abuse imaginable on hundreds of victims.
Now, I wish I'd have moved this whole thing over, because the final stage of this is death.
You're essentially depersonalizing the person in front of you and imagining porn in your head to actually maintain arousal. I realized at that point it was out of control.
For the record, you are guilty of killing many women and girls.
Yes, that's true.
Ted, how did it happen?
My experience with, I'd say, pornography generally, but with pornography that deals on a violent level with sexuality. Once you become addicted to it, and I look at this as a kind of addiction, I would keep looking for more potent, more explicit, more graphic kinds of material. Like an addiction, you keep craving something which is harder, something which gives you a greater sense of excitement.
It changes the way you think about people. People become objects. People become body parts. They become things to be used rather than people to be loved.
It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. When you depersonalize another person and view them as just an object for pleasure instead of a living, breathing human being, it seems to make it easier to do things you shouldn't do.
I just view things as objects. People, animals, trees, cars, they're just all the same to me. I just feel everything's pretty much on this earth's a waste of time, really.
Well, then let me ask you, John, does it make it easier to kill someone because you vision everything, you look at everything other than your family as just one and the same?
That's
basically an object.
Right.
Does that make it easier?
I would have to say it would.
Until you reach the point where the pornography only goes so far. You reach that jumping off point where you begin to wonder if maybe actually doing it will give you that which is beyond just reading about it or looking at it.
You're essentially depersonalizing the person in front of you.
I desensitized myself to it. I had these obsessive desires and thoughts wanting to control them.
And all the pornography that I had been buying, renting, swapping, I had gotten my hands on some bondage and discipline pornography. I had eventually started using some of this bondage and discipline because of the excitement. That was very arousing and heightening to me.
We are your sons and we are your husbands. We grew up in regular families, and pornography can reach out and snatch a kid out of any house today. It snatched me out of my home 20, 30 years ago. And as diligent as my parents were, there is no protection.
I was saving body parts such as skulls and skeletons. No one had a clue as to what was happening.
There was no clue.
It was my secret, nobody knew, and that allowed it to grow.
You start out with tame stuff, and little by little, you go up to more and more extreme acts.
It was something that had taken time to build up. It didn't just happen. It took time to build that up. I had been fantasizing about killing. I believe it would have been maybe as short as another month or two, and I would have actually killed him if I was not arrested.
Death.
I'm no social scientist and I haven't done a survey, but I've lived in prison for a long time now. I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography. There's no question about it. The FBI's own study on serial homicide shows that the most common interest among serial killers is pornography.
For several months now, I spent a lot of time in the deep web. After coming home from school, I would sit at my computer and surf the net until late in the night. I know a lot of people who are using deep web. Most of them are just curious or find it exciting because there is much stuff which is banned. Apart from that, deep web was always a good topic of conversation at break time. Today, deep web has become a trend, but for me, I think it is something else. Deep web fascinates me. There, I'm free. There, nobody knows who I am. I noticed that slowly, but surely, an addiction is developing. Most people call it an addiction, but for me, it's a brand new passion. A deep-rooted passion that awakes new cravings in me. Every day, I get to know a new side of me. I chat with many different people and exchange information. I watch a lot of videos, but I like what I see. But at this point, I should admit that I am a teenager with a small sadistic vein. I get bored very quickly, and because of that, I am always on the lookout for such material. And so I dive deeper and deeper into the deep web. I saw things that far exceeded my imagination. But after a while, even this stuff became boring and uninteresting to me. One day, when looking for the next violent material, I stumbled on a chat. It was a chat room for murderers and pedophiles. I read a few comments and grinned a little. I was bored, so I decided to go with it. I logged in, and off I went. I spent so much time in the deep web, I saw myself as kind of professional and went about it all so confidently, it started to become second nature. I made fun of the people in this chat room. I claimed that I was a hacker, and now I had their data and was gonna send it to the local police. It was a lot of fun. Other users started sending me death threats, but I just couldn't stop. I just wrote one stupid comment after the other. Sooner or later, I received a message from the site admin. He wrote, if I was aware of what I'm doing and if I knew the consequences. I was equipped with the latest firewall. I was not afraid of him. I laughed out loud and celebrated. Suddenly, my screen went blank. I thought, what's going on? Suddenly, pictures of dead people came every second. The images alternated faster and faster. I tried all the possible key combinations to stop it, but it was no use. Slowly, a strange feeling came over me. I was about to get up and pull the plug from my computer. Then, I saw it. I was petrified. My eyes could not believe what they just saw. I was rigid with fear. The terrible slide had stopped and only saw a picture of me. I had forgotten to turn off my webcam again. Someone must have hacked my computer and took photos of me. I stared at this image for several minutes and I didn't know what to do. Suddenly, the image disappeared and I was in the chat room again. I was briefly relieved, but then came the next mega shocker. It hit me right in the face. My picture was visible for every user to see. It rained death threats and hate comments. They wrote everything about what they would do to me and my family. But that was not the worst of it. Under my picture was my real full name and my exact current full address.
With 100% NutraSweet.
If Mr. Bloodhound used the same code in his letter, we'll break it in.
You're in Dutyville. First of all,
Pornography is something that is addictive. They call it the new drug. Pornography is no less addictive than the hardest drugs in the world. When the Rambam wrote in Halakha, biggest addiction a human being can have is to waste seed, is immorality. He was saying it as this is divine information. What happens with pornography is that it triggers a protein called delta phos B. Delta phos B is one of the things that a person, in essence, gets pleasure from, but it's also one of the things that is connects to addiction.
Welcome to your brain on porn. Here are the basics. Porn overstimulated your brain, and your brain changed. You see, being hooked on porn is due to the same brain changes that occur with all addictions. These brain changes are behind your cravings. These brain changes keep you coming back to porn, even if you want to quit. The internet porn is what we call a super stimulus. What that means is that it's way beyond what we've ever encountered. A heavy porn user would view more hot babes or hot guys or hot whatever in one session than our ancestors would need in several lifetimes. So this can be considered another super stimulus. Our brains never evolved to handle heavy porn use like this, and unlike junk food, you can never get full. Here's another reason internet porn is so stimulating and so addictive. It takes advantage of an old program located in your primitive brain. The subconscious program is what got you started down the path of using porn. Internet porn is really far more stimulating than just images. It's really due to the endless novelty and the ability to click from one image to another. Another reason internet porn is so stimulating is that it can escalate rather quickly to more kinky or more shocking material. Number 2. Addictive personality is not a prerequisite for getting hooked on internet porn. Now, the standard model is that you have to have a predisposition. You have to be genetically inclined to get addicted. Well, this is definitely true, but what we found out is that many of the guys who were showing up on the site had never had any other addiction. They were just regular guys who started watching and got hooked. And what's interesting is once they got off a porn session, they returned to their quote, normal selves.
So now what happens is a kid doesn't know right or left, 12, 13, 14 years old, gets a phone, goes on a computer, has free access, goes on the internet, starts looking at pornography, things he's never even imagined in his worst dreams, drug addiction, sex addiction, money addiction, all types of addictions. In essence, this particular protein is confused, thinking now after he saw that him seeing this immodesty, this pritzut, led to a good feeling, it now connects the brain to think that every time he sees this filth, it's gonna lead to good. Scientists confirm that it's an addiction no less than drugs. It all starts with yourself. Rabbi Nachman Breslev Alav Shalom says in Likutei Maharan, person is promiscuous with himself, eventually is promiscuous with the opposite sex. Promiscuous with the opposite sex, eventually same sex. It's not enough. He wants taboo. By himself, not enough. Watching a certain type of filth. So he watches some other filth. Eventually he wants to fulfill that filth. It all starts with